We are up and running. Hello, is anybody there?
We've all gone out to coffee. We'll be back
Oh.
soon.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, bye-bye.
Let me send a note to Senator Baldacci, letting him know everything's all set.
All righty. Is judiciary up yet, Representative Libby? Oh, good.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, Cheryl, how are we doing now?
We are wonderful.
Okay. So I'm gonna go around and just have people, because I don't think we got, none of this got on Zoom, but why don't people, now that they can see us, not just hear us, starting with Representative Paulus, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. My name is Sean Paulus. I represent House District 52, which is all the city of Bath.
Great. And Senator Kimberly Rosen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kimberly Rosen, Senate District 8. I have 16 towns from Castine to Lincoln, including the city of Brewer.
Great. Representative Walter Reisman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Walter Reisman, and I represent District 69, which is Bridgeton, Harrison, and Denmark.
Great, thank you. Representative Randall Greenwood.
Good morning and thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Randy Greenwood, House District 82, which are the towns of Litchfield, Monmouth, and my hometown of Wales in both Androscoggin and Kennebec counties.
Great. And Representative Mark Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Mark Bryan. I represent House District 24, part of the town of Wyndham. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Representative Kathy Downs.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Kathy Downs. I represent District 130, which is Bucksport and Orrington. Thank you.
Representative Francis Head.
Good morning and thank you, Mr. Chair. And my name is Francis Head. I live in Bethel. I represent District 117, 23 towns and townships in Oxford and one other district. Yes, one of the, I'm sorry, I just was deep in thought.
That's all right.
Anyway, that's it. I'm 117 and I do apologize for my in-depth brain that didn't switch over.
No problem. Representative William Toole.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Will Toole. I represent the Machias Bay area plus Lubec and Eastport down in Washington County.
Great. And my co-chair, Representative Ann Matlack.
Good morning. I'm Ann Matlack. I represent House District 92, which includes the communities of Cushing, Thomaston, South Thomaston, St. George, Matinicus, Cree Haven, and the Muscle Ridge Island. And Representative Head, if I had to stop and think, I would never get through that list. It's just wrote at this point and we interrupted your train of thought.
And my name is Joe Baldacci. I represent Senate District 9, which is the city of Bangor and the town of Herman. And we are opening this work session on LD 1366 and LD 1472. Lynn, you want to start the analysis?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first bill is 1366, And this is an act to require a majority vote of the legislature for Maine to join a multi-state compact. And because these bills are short, I am going to share the language so that you can see what this says. It prohibits the state or a state agency from joining, adopting, or implementing a multi-state contract unless, a multi-state compact, unless the compact is approved by a majority of the legislature. The testimony for this bill, this was brought to us by Representative Libby, who discussed the need for oversight of these types of arrangements, particularly if there was a fiscal cost involved. The proponents who spoke in favor included either spoke in favor or submitted written testimony, included Ken Capron, the Maine Policy Institute, and the Maine People Before Politics. The focus of their testimony, or the commonality in their testimony, was that the legislature does represent the people, and this, having the legislature involved, would allow the people's voice to be heard with respect to these multi-state compacts. The opponents who either testified or provided written testimony included the League of Women Voters of Maine, the Natural Resource Council of Maine, and the Secretary of State's office. The testimony focused on the number of such compacts that are in existence and the disruption that could occur and potentially put the state out of compliance with federal law. I believe the Secretary of State's testimony included a number of examples, as did the two state agencies that testified neither for nor against, which was the Maine DEP and the Maine DOT. The note I took from their testimony is that if there is a cost to a multi-state compact, the legislature would be involved, as that the agency would need additional funds, and so the legislature would be involved in that process. These two agencies also testified that if there were new regulations required by a multi-state compact, that the public would be involved in the Administrative Procedures Act process, which requires public hearings, opportunity for written comments. The legislature is not involved in routine technical rule changes, only in major substantive rule changes. So the regulations may or may not see involvement by the legislature. I just wanted to take a moment and point out that this talks specifically about multi-state compacts, and there is in the US Constitution a provision about compacts which says that no state shall, without the consent of Congress, enter into any agreement or compact with another state. Not all multi-state agreements or compacts go through this process of approval from the US Congress, but there are some that have been identified, and this page is a little big so you can't see it all. But according to the National Center of Interstate Compacts, these are the compacts that the state of Maine has entered into. Many of these have corresponding statutory language. For example, the Atlantic State Marine Fisheries Compact. There's one on adoption, Interstate Compact for Adult Offender Supervision. So these compacts, these larger type multi-state agreements, often have corresponding statutory language in the state of Maine, but not all of them do. I listed some of the compacts or agreements that were provided, the examples provided by either DOT, the Secretary of State, or DEP. And some of them were the Zero Emission Vehicle MOU, the Long Island Sound Tropospheric Ozone Study. I'm not sure that these agreements would necessarily fit in the language in the bill. So the bill, that's why I showed you the language originally. the language of this bill, 1366, specifically talks about multi-state compacts. I don't know what the sponsor's intent was, whether it was just to deal with the compacts as they're defined in the US or as they're addressed in the US Constitution, or if the intent was to include some of those agreements and arrangements and memorandum of understanding that the departments discussed. So that may be a question for the sponsor. And I'll pause on this one and not do the analysis on the next one, if that's the pleasure of the chairs.
Okay, Representative Libby, did you want to respond to the points raised in the analysis?
Sure. So this bill is specifically intended to address any kind of compact like the TCI compact that the chief executive would have oversight over, just to have that check and balance of the legislature. It's not intended to capture those that are already being designated by Congress.
Do we know how many have been, Lynn, do you, are all those agreements been consented to by Congress, or do we know?
I did not have an opportunity to check on those. I did not have an opportunity to check on those.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
Representative Toole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the other issue, and it's not an issue, but Lynn brought up the point about this would bring into play agreements that have already been done. I wonder if the sponsor would be willing to have an effective date of any agreements made after, pick a date, January 1st, maybe the date sooner, maybe it's later. I wonder if the sponsor could weigh in on that, so that we're not affecting the existing arrangements.
Thank you, Representative Toole. I would absolutely be amenable to that, and would appreciate the committee's consideration of what date would be appropriate. I certainly think January 1st may be appropriate, but I appreciate your input there.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments by members of the committee? Representative Toole?
I think it's important that we have the transparency, and I think it's important that we do this in a responsible way. Clearly, the sponsor's intent is to not impact compacts and agreements that are governed by Congress per se, or existing ones. So I think if we were to pass this, I think I'd be open to passing this with the understanding that it'd be to deal with compacts, arrangements, agreements, whatever the proper verbiage there is, beginning January 1st of 2022, so that we're not calling into question any issues with current or existing arrangements.
Okay, Representative Matlack?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a representative from the Secretary of State's office. I was wondering if we might bring her over so that she could explain to us about her perspective on this. Kathy Curtis?
Sure.
Cheryl?
Cheryl, can you bring her over?
She's on her way.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, good morning, Kathy. Did you want to make any comments on the analysis that you've heard so far?
Good morning. Thank you very much, Senator Baldacci. I'm Kathy Curtis, Deputy Secretary of State for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. I've been in this position for a few months, but I held this position 10 years ago and for many years prior to that. Yes, I thank you for this opportunity to speak to this bill. One of the concerns that we have is that for future compacts, there may be an opportunity for the state to, for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles to join into an agreement, but that it may be a timing issue. We may need to act relatively quickly to join into an agreement, and we would not have, we may miss that opportunity if we have to wait for the legislature to convene. Many of the agreements that we have that was in the Secretary of State's testimony is very beneficial to the motor carrier industry here in Maine. Some of the examples that she pointed out to you in her testimony required motor carriers to obtain permits or registrations in every state, and they would have to actually contact every state and obtain those permits or registrations. And under these agreements, and there could be others like this in the future, that these, they would just come to their home state now, and we're able to provide the permitting and the registration for all of the states in the agreement. So it's a one-stop shopping for them. And the motor carrier industry has found this extremely beneficial. So it would be unfortunate if we were not able to join an agreement in the future, if we had missed an opportunity to do so, if we were required to wait.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Curtis? Okay, Representative Greenwood, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just a couple of points of observation. When we say January 1st, I'm thinking January 1st of the, 2021. So it's like not pushing it out another year or another half year. So I would be amenable to January 1, 2021 was my thought. And just as a response to Ms. Curtis's statements, if this compact is of the utmost urgency or importance, certainly the governor or the presiding officers could call the legislature back into session to address that concern.
Okay. Representative Toole?
Yeah, the only reason I suggested 2022 is because that would bring into play existing agreements and compacts and such that have already been made, whereas going forward. But the larger issue that the Secretary of State folks mentioned about calling us, about doing this on when we're not in session, I don't think we should be rushing into any agreement. And it ought to be well thought out. It ought to be happening. We're in session 6 months a year in the long year and 4 months during the short year. And as Representative Greenwood mentioned, we can be called back in for various purposes. And typically, since I've been here, every year we've been called back in for something. Every year it's been for something, with the exception of last year during the pandemic. And even then, I mean, we were all polled. So the reality is we can come back, and there's strategic ways of doing it, scheduling it. So I don't get the concern of something happening during the interim. That if we really need to come back, we can come back and deal with other things as well, if there's a list of other things. So, but yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Toole. Representative Matlack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this bill makes things a lot more awkward, a lot more cumbersome, a lot more expensive, and it calls into question the ability for the state to agree with other states to work on issues that are more technical than policy. And so by bringing the legislature back in to work on technical bills about whether or not the state of Maine will be able to register vehicles from other states in one place, or whether you have to go to 50 different states to register your vehicles, it seems to be a cumbersome. So I'm going to move ought not to pass on this bill, please.
Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion?
Second. I second that motion, Senator.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. Any further discussions? Okay. Seeing none, I'd ask Cheryl to call the roll.
Who seconded that, please?
Representative Bryant?
Thank you. Thank you. LD 1366 ought not to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
No.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, no. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
No,
Representative William Toole, no. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
No.
Representative Randall Greenwood, no. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Excuse me. Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
No.
Representative Francis Head, no. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
No.
Representative Kathy Downs, no. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 5 yes. 5 no. 3 absent.
Okay. So there's an ought not to pass report, and is there an ought to pass as with an amendment, or is there an ought to pass? What's Representative Toole and Representative Greenwood? You both have your hands up. So Representative
Yeah.
Toole.
yeah, I think at least from my perspective, I definitely would limit this to only those agreements not covered by Congress, as Lynn had mentioned, and we set the effective date January 1st of 2021. And go from there. That's
Agreements not submitted. This would not include agreements that the state submits for the consent of Congress. Is that what you
right,
said?
right, because those are already covered through that, and the other part of that would be the effective date would be retroactive to per the sponsor's wishes to January 1st, 2021.
Okay. And Representative Greenwood, you're in concurrence?
Yeah, that was my point I wanted to make, sir. Thank you.
And yep, sure. And I'm assuming Representative Head and Representative Downs and Senator Rosen, you want to give me a thumbs up for that, or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's where we are on that item. Then the next one is 1472.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an act to require legislative approval for states' participation in compacts, programs, and agreements regarding transportation and climate change. I am going to share the screen on the language. Obviously, this is very similar to the bill that you just discussed. However, the language in the bill is a bit different and raises a few of the issues. But before I share that, I will tell you that the sponsor of this bill, I do not think the sponsor is present. If my recollection is correct, Representative Toole read the bill in. The proponents for this bill were the Maine Motor Transportation Association, Ken Capron and Dan Chase, and the opponents was the Natural Resources Council of Maine, the Natural Conservancy, and Jeff Crawford from the Maine DEP testified on this bill as well as the previous one. There were written testimony from a variety of different organizations and individuals on both sides of the issue. So the point I would like to make about this bill is I think that the language, unlike the other bill, this language is a little more ambiguous, particularly in the part where it says agreement regarding transportation and climate change. If the intention is to deal with a specific climate change compact that the governor or the state is considering, you may want to clarify that a bit. If the purpose of this bill is to be broader and deal just with transportation to deal with transportation and climate change as two separate entities, then this phraseology would encompass those two. But I think it can be read as being two separate categories. And this bill also uses interjurisdictional as opposed to multi-state. I don't have a problem with that, but it talks about compacts, programs, or agreements. And there was some testimony that the phrase program might be broad and have a significant impact on the operation of state agencies. So those are just the, I think, technical issues with this that I would raise if the committee is moving forward, to just have a discussion and be clear on what your intention is for this bill.
Okay, Representative Tool, you have your hand up.
I guess I never put it down, but since, yeah, so the question I had in regarding to transportation and climate, I believe that's referring to the TCI specifically, if that's any help. It may not be clear in the language of the bill, but if it's not, it certainly should be. And I would agree the word program probably does bring in other things that we may not be fully aware of. Certainly compacts and agreements are things that we're getting at, but that's just where my thoughts.
Okay, Representative Matlack.
Again, I think bills like this are cumbersome. They are expensive to bring the legislature back in for just a specific technical item rather than for policy matters. And because this is so broad and not really very focused, I'm going to again move ought not to pass.
Okay, is there a second?
Senator, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussions? Okay, seeing none, I would have Cheryl call the roll.
LD 1472 ought not to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
No.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, no. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
No.
Representative William Toole, no. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
No.
Representative Randall Greenwood, no. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
No.
Representative Francis Head, no. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
No.
Representative Kathy Downs, no. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 5 yes, 5 no, 3 absent.
Senator Claxton is absent, and Representative Dorr, who's the third one?
Lynn Copeland,
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
Representative Copeland.
Is the ought to pass report, is that amended similarly as to the last one?
I would put forward that the word program be taken out, and that to address Lynn's concern about the ambiguity around I cannot talk today. Transportation and climate initiative, maybe that should be, I believe the intent was the TCI initiative in particular. That it be, that those be capitals.
Okay, is that the other members of that in concurrence? Representative Greenwood?
Representative Toole, I think it was climate change in general as well as the TCI initiative. Would that be
Okay,
fair to say?
that could be, let me check again. Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong bill. I'm sorry, that's fine. We just leave it as it is then.
So what are your instructions to Lynn?
other than taking the word program out.
Okay. And is there an effective date that you want in there or not?
No, I think we'll leave it the way it is.
Okay, and I'm assuming everybody is okay with that by a thumbs up. You guys just want to do a thumbs up. There we go. There we go. Representative Bryant, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the audience out there, maybe you could explain the ties and where that could go with the other members that aren't here being able to vote later.
Sure. Yep. So the other members who aren't here are Senator Claxton, Representative Dorr, Representative Copeland, and they will have until Wednesday at noon. Excuse me, today, they'll have until Friday at noon. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, they'll have until Friday at noon to record their votes
Yes.
before this vote is finalized. But thank you for asking for clarification. Okay, so the next item is LD 1365. Lynn, do you want to present your analysis?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will say that I think Representative Buckingham, who is the sponsor of this bill, is in the attendee room. So this bill is an act to prohibit municipalities from prohibiting short-term rentals. It enacts a new section in Title 30A. I'm trying to share my screen. That prevents a municipality from enacting or enforcing an ordinance, rule, or order that prohibits short-term accommodation rentals. As I said, Representative Buckingham was the sponsor of this bill, and he spoke about home rule, but also that there were times when the state needed to set parameters regarding the home rule ability, and that to protect personal property rights from infringement, that this was such a time. There were proponents who spoke, talking about restrictions on short-term rentals affecting the local economy and the finances of individual property owners. There was discussion about this would level the playing field so that there would be more similar regulations around short-term accommodation rentals across the state. The opponents was the Maine Municipal Association, who talked about home rule authority, and that this bill as drafted would prohibit health and safety ordinances or regulations on the lodging industry, and how that type of regulation is historically within the purview of municipalities. The MMA also talked about how short-term rentals sometimes destabilize neighborhoods, and they did support the idea of owner-occupied short-term rentals. And I did not check to see if the MMA representative was here. Neither for nor against was Hospitality Maine, which talked about how this is an important part of Maine's economy. There was numerous testimony, I think perhaps the largest thus far, as you can see, numerous written testimonies submitted on this bill. So it did create a lot of interest. I want to share with the committee that there was a similar bill in the 129th that was considered by this legislature. It was also titled an act to prohibit municipalities from prohibiting short-term rentals. This bill was a little different. It not only in where it went into statute, it went into this section of Title 30A that specifically governs innkeepers and lodging houses. This bill goes into a different section of 30A, into the section on ordinances. I don't think that there is really much of a difference. I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other as far as where the bill goes. It also prevented municipalities from prohibiting or restricting the use of short-term rentals. So it was a little broader, but there was an exception last session in that it allowed municipalities to enact narrowly tailored ordinances or regulations that protect public health and safety. The bill, as amended, was still voted out, ought not to pass. And the amendment actually removed the ability of a municipality to regulate for short-term rentals, and it did define short-term rentals as a rental of a residential unit for less than 30 days, and it did not have a fiscal cost. There were several information requests. So one of them was, are there other states that limit state local control? There are at least 6. This information was a few years old, so there may be more. Arizona, Florida, Indiana, Tennessee, and Wisconsin all have legislation that prohibits local authorities from restricting short-term rentals. There was a question about how do other states local control? What are other states doing on local control? New York City has some regulations that allow you to rent your room in an owner-occupied space, prohibits short-term rentals in what they call multi-residential units, which is an apartment complex and is an example, but it does specifically allow licensed B&Bs and hotels and other residential, multiple residential dwellings to continue to exist. San Lo, a county in California, excuse me, restricts the number of short-term rental units within the same block. Some short-term rentals must be registered, there must be licensed, some of them require fees. Some of them are limited to owner-occupied residential short-term rentals, so that, or limit how many days of a year a short-term rental can occur. So in San Francisco, you can't rent out for short-term for more than 90 days a year. Some local residents have restrictions on advertising, and San Francisco also only allows full-time residents to do short-term rentals of their property. So there are a variety of things that local communities have enacted to restrict. There was a question about what does Maine have, and I don't know if anyone is present from a municipality. What I found is that Rockland, Bar Harbor have regulations, Lewiston and Portland have regulations, Cape Elizabeth has a pending ordinance, York has an ordinance, but it deals with the number of parking spaces that are required, so it's a bit limited. But you can see on the screen some of the restrictions that are imposed by some of the larger or more popular as vacation destinations. There was some question about whether a ban on short-term rentals, an all-out ban, is legal. There have been court cases on whether you can completely ban short-term rentals. And as you can imagine, there's the issue of, is this a taking of personal property rights? Does it violate equal protection? There really isn't a clear legal standard that's applying, because municipalities do have the right to impose restrictions on your property rights or your equal protection. There are some standards, they need to be reasonable, and I will not give you an education on those legal standards at this moment. There were some questions posed to others. And I do not know if well, I do know the sponsor is here. There was a question about how taxes are collected for the sponsor. And then there was a question about the change in use, which I believe one of the other people who testified was going to provide information on. The only thing I would bring up for the committee to consider if you're going to move forward with this bill is, what is the definition of short term? It's not clearly defined. Do you want it to be a time frame? Some states have, 30 days, less than 30 days, less than 90 days. Some states do it on a weekly basis if you don't rent it out consecutively for 7 days. And the other note of caution I would give the committee is that you want to be careful that you don't enact a bill that applies to bed and breakfasts inns, those kind of small lodging places that are already licensed, that could be considered an owner-occupied building. But other than that, it's fairly straightforward bill. Any questions?
Any questions of Lynn? Representative Bryant, you have a hand up? Okay, you might have just left that up there. Oh, no, there you are. Did you have a question, Representative Bryant? You're on
You
mute.
apologize, you did leave that up there. My apologies, sir.
No, that's all right. Anybody have any questions for Lynn, Representative Greenwood?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess just a general observation from your analysis is, I think it was the intent of the sponsor, and he's here to answer this, but was it to prohibit the prohibition of short-term rentals? But I wanted to make sure that we understand that if we allow, how do I want to say this? There's the chance that by prohibiting it and you don't regulate it, that municipalities could then regulate it and say short terms are only allowed in certain zones of the city. So then we're back to where we started. So I guess I just want to make sure we're all encompassing that if the intent is to make it so that you can have a short-term rental on your property, that it can't be restricted by other means.
Okay, Lynn, do you want to address that issue?
I do, and thank
From a
you.
legal standpoint?
Yes, thank you, Representative Greenwood. I do think I should clarify that this bill is very narrow in its scope. It is saying that municipalities cannot outright restrict short-term rentals. That's all it's doing. I did share quite a lot of information about how communities and states have limited, and part of that was, part of that was because this issue came up more than once, so it's been 2 sessions in a row. So sometimes I provide that extraneous information, but you're right. I don't want to have you, forgetting that this bill is very limited in its scope. It is merely saying that municipalities cannot restrict. Let me check
Cannot
that.
prohibit.
They cannot prohibit, right? Thank
Right.
you, Mr. Chair. Cannot prohibit. So that's an outright. Municipalities cannot outright ban. This bill does not prevent municipalities from imposing health and safety restrictions, parking, those types of things. Municipalities can still enact ordinances.
Okay. Representative Fockingham, welcome. Do you want to make any commentary or reaction to the legal analysis?
Sure. Yeah, I think Lynn had a pretty good answer for that. And obviously, if the issue, an issue arising from short-term rental was that too many people were parking along the side of the road, and the town wanted to, regulate that type of parking. I think the key thing is, though, that any regulation would apply to all the neighbors equally. So, you could put in town ordinances that would apply to all the property owners, but not specifically target short-term rental. And what we're seeing here is one of the biggest growing industries in the state. It's bringing an unbelievable amount of economic activity into our state. And I think that it's really our job to act proactively on the side of erring on the side of caution and protecting that economic activity and private property rights. Really, essentially, when you use short-term rentals, they're becoming the guests of the owner, and I just don't want to see that prohibited. I think that it would be smart for the state to take the approach of protecting the short-term rentals by prohibiting anything, and then if trouble arose the other way, then it would be time to react. But what I want to stop is simply places prohibiting these because out of frivolous reasons, really, just neighbors out of jealousy that someone else is making money off renting their home, silliness type of reasons what that might happen in small towns, why a prohibition would happen when it really shouldn't infringe on someone's property rights.
Okay, any questions or comments by members of the committee? I think the first issue, I'll get to you in just a second, Representative Tool, but I think the first issue we need to define is the definition of short-term rental. I think we need to define that term instead of it leaving it just out there. Could be anything. Representative Tool, did you want to add to that conversation?
Yeah, I was just wondering if Rebecca Graham was available to react to the analysis as well from MMA.
Well, I'd like to get to, welcome, Rebecca. I'd like to get the committee's thoughts, though, on what they define as short term. Do people want to comment on what they think short term should be defined? Is it 7 days or less? Is it 30 days or less? Is it more than that? We need to have a definition for a short term. Representative Greenwood?
I mean, I guess my question is there already, because it's a term that's relatively commonly used now, is there a definition of short-term rental versus long-term rental in anywhere in statute? Is it, I mean, short-term rental is a very common phrase that you hear.
I don't know. I think that, well, Lynn, why don't you tell us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did do a word search for short-term rental throughout the statutes. There is a reference to short-term rental platforms, and that's in a different title. But that is basically defining the Airbnb, the ways that people actually rent something. It wasn't defined in statute anywhere that I could suggest as a starting point for the committee.
Okay, so I think it's incumbent for us to discuss what short term means if we're going to consider the bill, because it could mean wide variety of things. Representative Matlack?
Personally, I'm not in favor of this bill, so I'm not sure I want to worry about what the definition of short-term rental is. I think the individual municipalities can deal with that issue within their own statutes. I know that probably in my town and several of the communities around here that they may or may not be interested in dealing with this issue. But I know that our larger community, Rockland, does have regulations already in place that seem to work well. They balance the needs of the folks who are trying to rent their properties, but also of the neighbors. And it's not just people being jealous. It's dark neighborhoods. It's people coming and going. It's parties for a weekend get together that it disrupts a residential neighborhood. So I don't have an answer to how long short term is, but I think it should be left up to the municipalities to determine how best to deal with this issue, and having a state blanket on a home rule issue doesn't serve anyone else's best interest. I know that the people in St. George know what's best. The people in the city of Rockland would know best. The people in Bar Harbor and other communities would know best how these short-term rentals impact their communities and take the steps to best handle them. So I'm going to move ought not to pass on this bill.
Okay, is there a second?
I'd second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Representative Tool and then Representative Head.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would agree with Representative Matlack in that communities that are dealing with these issues spend a good number of hours debating what the definition of short-term rental is, debating all of these unique issues. Every community is different, and planning and zoning and those type of things really should be done locally as opposed to globally or statewide, if you will. And that's one of the reasons this was voted unanimous not to pass 2 years ago. I believe it was unanimous. Lynn can correct me if I'm wrong, and if I am wrong, it wouldn't be the first time today. So, but with that, no, I would support the pending motion. I think we're opening ourselves up we're opening a big can of worms if we go forward with that.
Okay, Representative Head? Did you want to speak?
Yes, I'd like to. I live in Bethel. We have Sunday River ski area that we provide housing for. And without being allowed to do short terms, many families couldn't come for a weekend, or depending on how each town decided that they were going to do this. And it does interfere with property rights if we try to tell people they can't rent it short term. And there's a lot of recreational areas in Maine. Rangeley is part of my district, and they just got the ski area Saddleback reopened, and the impact is stronger than the argument for, in my opinion.
Okay, and Representative Greenwood? Thank you, Representative Head. Representative Greenwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I couldn't agree more with Representative Head. I think, the bill just says that municipalities can't outright prohibit it, and I'm going to support that motion. Obviously, we can agree to disagree on the level of regulation, but to do an outright prohibition on short-term rentals, I think is just unconstitutional. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Okay, Senator Rosen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd still like to hear from Rebecca Graham, please.
Yep, Rebecca? Do you want to comment?
Thank you, Senator Rosen. The prohibition of any sort of business has always been the purview of a municipality, from everything from whether or not a community accepts a bar or a marijuana business. It's really up to that community to decide what type of industry they want. And all businesses are or must adhere to those same regulations within every municipality. So it's really up to that community to shape how they want to be shaped for the future. That said, there is no outright ban. All communities are trying to look at this sensitively because they understand the opportunities for their residents, and they want it to be in places that make sense for their community. But they do that in consultation with their residents rather than restricting or making those decisions de facto without their input. So,
okay, can I ask a question, Rebecca? Is it possible, can a municipality prohibit somebody from renting a room in their own house? Is that possible right now under current law?
Unless there was a specific ordinance to that effect. And
no, I that's what I meant. Can a town pass an ordinance preventing someone from renting a room in their own house?
Theoretically, they could, within the scope of if the state hasn't actually assumed the purview of that. Theoretically, they could include that.
Okay. Representative Matlack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment that were this the other way around, instead of requiring that the state not allow, that if this were a bill that would disallow short-term rentals in municipalities, I would also be opposing it. Again, because I don't want a statewide prohibition. That's not what this does. And this bill would restrict municipalities' ability to say whether or not they were going to allow short-term rentals. And I don't want the state determining what is best in the way of local ordinances with regard to renting out rooms, renting out ancillary buildings, and so forth. I think it's up to the individual municipality, and I think this bill takes away the ability of the individual municipality to determine what's best for their community.
Okay. Representative Greenwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm listening back and forth, and I just have a question from possibly Rebecca Graham. Can a municipality prohibit a long-term rental? And is long-term different than short-term? So if I wanted to rent my property, can the municipality prohibit me from renting it?
Thank you. No, it's whether or not it's residential. So if it's a rental unit, if you're renting your house out, and it was a house and not a commercial entity for someone to be living in, that's where that rub comes, and that's why they have the districts and the zones that make those determinations. But for long-term rentals,
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so if I wanted to rent my property out for, 6 months or a year, and that probably would be considered, in everyone's opinion, long-term, there's really no prohibition. But if I own lakefront property, which I have a neighbor that does, and they rent their property for 4 weeks out of the summer, and they actually move away to pay for their property taxes, because they live on the lake, their taxes are over $6,000 a year. So they rent their property for 1 week periods. Actually, they're 6-day periods, and they allow cleanup for 1 day between the families. So that's considered short term. Ultimately, it's still residential, but that could be prohibited, but the long term couldn't be, is what you're saying, correct?
that's correct. And I would argue that the short term is also not prohibited in any community at all whatsoever. Currently, the mechanism for that happening is that the rest of the community finds that to be a problem within those certain districts. And then and only then do municipalities weigh in on those pieces.
Okay, Representative Toole and then Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess my question for Rebecca would be, a couple of years ago, this all spawned up out of the situation in South Portland, when we heard this the last time around. Would a bill like this undo existing ordinances or make them illegal or things like that? And the other part of that is, have courts rule one way or the other on such ordinances?
Well, Lynn, did you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go back to Representative Greenwood. Municipalities can enact ordinances that restrict, can enact ordinances on long-term rentals and short-term rentals. And the same issues would apply. The same principles. Is that an unjustified taking? I think that most municipalities, maybe no municipalities, restrict long-term rentals other than, as Rebecca said, they have to be located, you can't put a business in a residential setting. So there's the zoning restrictions. But I think that they could try other restrictions. I don't know if they would pass, legal muster. As far as Representative Toole's question, which of course now I've completely forgotten because I was so focused on answering that. So Representative Toole, can you repeat your question? Please.
Not a problem. And it was for both you and Rebecca. Actually, it was in regards to the South Portland situation. That spawned this a couple of years ago. They all passed ordinances addressing this issue. Would a bill of this nature undo those ordinances or put those towns or communities into some other kind of legal situation? And how would it impact other communities that have adopted ordinances since then governing short-term rentals?
Thank you, Representative Toole. And I'm going to give an answer, but I would love also for Rebecca to hopefully confirm what I say. But if she doesn't, that's okay. This bill would not impact existing ordinances. This bill only says you can't outright prohibit. So unless there's a town in Maine that has an ordinance that says you cannot do short-term rentals in our town, that's the only thing this bill would affect. The ordinances on how many people, how long, can you have a party, those ordinances would not be impacted if this bill was passed. And hopefully Rebecca is going to mirror that.
Rebecca, you want to chime in?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Baldacci. Sorry about that. I would like to be hopeful that Lynn is correct about this. I see that there's a significant opportunity for that to be interpreted widely by individuals. For instance, if a municipality prohibited short-term rentals within a specific neighborhood or area, that might be challenged through that. And that was our concern. Additionally, if an individual decided within their existing property, if they were going to establish an accessory dwelling unit, for instance, with that specific intent as part of the application process spoken, that any sort of ability to attempt to deny that would also be seen as a prohibition in function. And we would additionally be concerned about that.
Okay, Representative Head.
I'm wondering if this would be retroactive to people that already are involved with the short-term rentals, or does it start when the bill passes?
I think Lynn suggested that if there is a current prohibition, if we pass this bill, some town that has a prohibition this would supersede it. Is that correct, Lynn?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hurd. Yes, I think it would. And I also have to say that I do agree with Rebecca's, municipalities that ban in certain areas, they would no longer be allowed to do that.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? I'm going to be voting ought not to pass. The only amendment that I would be amenable to would be one allowing short-term rentals of rooms in owner-occupied buildings. That was one of the options, but at this point, I'm going to vote to support the ought not to pass, but we ever get a chance to, if that fails and we can just, or if somebody wants to reconsider it, I mean, that would be the only amendment I would be willing to vote for in terms of passing the bill. So let's see, Cheryl, do you want to call the roll?
I will. LD 1365 ought not to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
Yes.
Representative William Toole, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
No.
Representative Randall Greenwood, no. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
No.
Representative Francis Head, no. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 8 yes, 2 no, 3 absent. And the noes would be,
Ought to pass.
is that okay with you, Representative Head?
I think you concur with that. Isn't that correct, Representative Head?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have a series of constitutional officer positions. Maybe it might be helpful if we take a break until 11:45. Is that all right? And then we'll come back and Representative Matlack will chair because I have one of the bills, and we'll do that then. Is that all right, Representative Toole?
It is, but before we resume, are we going to be taking them in order? Are we going to be picking up with reconsidering 847 and then following on from there? I'm just curious about the order, that's all.
Well, I think that we can go by the order that they're there. like we did before. I think they're in the same order that we considered them the first time. The only thing I would say, and I anticipate, well, this discussion is, Representative Matlack, did you have a question or a comment?
No, it's just that we do have one bill that was passed out, but we have to come back and look at again. The other bills were tabled, so they will have to come off the table. So it's a
Essentially that-
reconsideration of one bill and then dealing with the rest of the bills also.
Right.
And that's why I was asking, is that bill could determine the chain of events for the rest of the bills.
Right. I'll speak to that issue when we come back. Let's just take a break and clear our heads and move around. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. I'll see you in 20 minutes.
Okay, I guess we'll wait another minute or so for Senator Baldacci to come back and join us. We send him a note. Okay. We are still waiting for Senator Baldacci to come back. It is his bill, so we'll wait just another minute or so. Yes, Lynn, you have a question.
I do, Madam Chair. I do have two language reviews, both of them minority reports.
Perfect. Let's do those right now.
Thank you.
Senator Baldacci's heading back, but let's do the language reviews while we're here.
All righty. So the first language review I'm going to show is the minority report for LD 1220, which was an act to require a 2/3 vote of the legislature every 2 weeks to maintain a state of emergency. Let me screen share the document. So this minority report was voted by Representative Greenwood, Head, Toole, Senator Rosen, and Representative Downs. And the amendment that the minority report asked for is that this provision that if the governor is requesting approval for continuation of an emergency and the legislature is not in session, that the President and the Speaker of the House shall convene the legislature. The remaining words mirror what the Constitution requires for the convening of the legislature, which is consent of the majority of members of the legislature of each political party. So just adding that in as the mechanism that the legislature will use so that it may vote on a on a emergency order. And the second one is a fiscal note. So it's changing the report that was ought to pass to an ought to pass as amended. And let me screen share. And then this is an amendment. This is the resolution that is proposing an amendment to the Constitution. And there is a fiscal note attached, and the members of the committee that voted ought to pass. And so I'm just asking you to approve changing the vote, your vote from ought to pass as amended. And that would be Representative Greenwood, Head, Toole, Senator Rosen, Representative Reisman, and Representative Downs. So this fiscal note just says that if there is a need to have more than one ballot page, that the Secretary of State may incur costs. So does anyone that I mentioned object to changing their vote to pass as amended? Seeing none.
I'm fine with it.
Thank you. All right. I see thumbs up. So I think I'm done with the language reviews for today. Thank
Wonderful.
you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you. So now we're going to call on your good offices yet again. We did vote on LD 874, but it has come back as not being appropriate. We cannot vote for 3 individual offices through one referendum question. We need either 3 questions or 1 question. Lynn, how do we take this back?
So if you would want to vote to reconsider 874,
Okay.
and then perhaps I can explain the options. And you may want to remove the remaining bills off the table. And I can identify them as a bulk, but I think motion to reconsider would be step 1 on 874.
Thank you. Rep. Tool, is that why your hand is up?
Yes, I was going to make the motion to reconsider 874.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
We have several. Thank you very much. Senator Baldacci?
Yeah, I just want to indicate that we could, I think the bill as it's written, it is fine if we asked 1 question on the referendum and all 3 offices were listed. Right. And we received an 8-4 ought to pass report. Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct.
So, you know, I just want, so what we'll be doing by reconsidering is we're going to have 3 bills to shepherd along. I'm just indicating that. I understand people want to have separate questions, and that's fine with me. But in terms of getting this through, I just think that there are some issues that it may be easier to have 1 bill that asks 1 question to get through the legislature, but I'm happy to do whatever the committee wants to do.
Thank you. Representative Reisman.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure we did this right. So the person, I think it was Representative Toole, voted to reconsider, and he was in the prevailing vote when it was first passed. Question.
Yes.
Yes.
So do we need to vote to reconsider now?
Yes.
So do we need show of hands, or do we need to or does Cheryl need to call the roll?
I think a show of hands is sufficient.
Okay. Show of hands. All those in favor of reconsidering this vote? Okay. All those opposed? Senator Baldacci opposes?
Yep.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Representative Reisman?
I believe so, as long as we're doing this the right way.
Yep.
Want to make sure we didn't do something wrong. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think one bill, 1 question with all 3 officers. That's my preference, just to have 1 bill with all 3 officers in 1 question, rather than having to have 3 separate votes on the floor. And ultimately,
okay.
Sir, I'm chairing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Toole.
yes. So as Lynn explained, what we did in the amendment was put 3 questions into 1 bill, which we cannot do. But we can do 1 question with all 3 officers in it, if I'm understanding it right. And perhaps Lynn could correct me if I'm not. And as I say again, it wouldn't be the first time today I'm wrong.
Lynn, what's the best way to handle this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee has 2 options. You can, in 874, you could vote a straight ought to pass. It would include the 3 constitutional officers. There would be 1 referendum question. The problem you ran into was that you can't have 1 bill with 3 referendum questions. So 874, you can pass it ought to pass. It has 1 referendum question. The other option is to split out and have multiple bills on the different constitutional officers, and each bill has an individual question.
Thank you. Representative Greenwood.
Thank you. And I think this goes back to the work session. I had really wanted to see 3 separate questions because there could be people that might support 2, but not the 3rd. So, just to risk, not, so that we're not alienating anybody, they had the option to vote for, each individual officer separately. If that was my preference, and that's what we had done with 874, but now we're saying it has to be either all or 3 individuals, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Thank you. We have a bill before us. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bills that are still tabled. Does anybody have a preference about this bill? Representative Toole?
I would say we vote it and see where it goes, and that'll flow into where the rest of them go at this point, because.
Is that a motion on your part, sir?
That's the motion, yes.
Ought to pass of the original bill?
Yes.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments with regard to the bill before us? Ought to pass the original motion 874. There being no further comments, Cheryl, could you call the roll, please?
Yes. LD 874 ought to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
No.
Representative Ann Matlack, no. Representative William Toole.
Yes.
Representative William Toole, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
No.
Representative Mark Bryant, no. Representative Randall Greenwood.
Yes.
Representative Randall Greenwood, yes. Representative Sean Paulus.
No.
Representative Sean Paulus, no. Representative Francis Head.
Yes.
Representative Francis Head, yes. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 7 yes, 3 no, and 3 absent. So minority report would be
Ought not to pass. Representative Bryant, Representative Paulus? Yes, ought not to pass.
Okay.
Representative Toole?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize my hand was still on.
Okay. We now have 5 other bills that were tabled that we need to deal with. First, we need to take them off the table. Sir? Representative Greenwood?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is if the others still have 2 days till noon to vote, do we need to go through these bills? Because it might change the outcome of the next coming bills. So I will not be supporting removing them from the table.
Thank you. Representative Bryant?
Having voted on the prevailing side to table, I move to take them off the table, all the bills left.
Do I have a second on that? Senator Baldacci seconds that motion. All in favor of taking all 5, and this is the way we put them on the table, we can take them off this way, I guess. All 5 bills off the table. Do we need to call the roll or should we just raise hands? Roll call?
Yeah, I think
Roll call,
so.
please, Cheryl.
okie dokie. This is a vote to take off the table LD 733, LD 1018, LD 1056, LD 1057, and LD 1058. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Tool.
No,
Representative William Tool, no. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
No.
Representative Randall Greenwood, no. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
No.
Representative Francis Head, no. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
No.
Representative Kathy Downs, no. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 6, yes, take off the table. 4, no, leave it on the table. And 3, absent.
Lynn,
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm hoping Cheryl will help me with this. I believe I heard Representative Greenwood say that he thought that the 3 absent votes would change the outcome for the vote on, oh, that's not what you said. Oh, okay. Never mind. Thank you.
okay. Senator Baldacci?
Excuse
I
me.
think
I'm
Representative.
sorry,
Greenwood-
Cheryl?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The 3 absent votes will not change it.
Right. That's all I wanted to say is the majority report is
It's still ought to
set.
pass.
Right.
Is
That's why I
that
feel
what you asked,
comfortable
Lynn?
in
I'm sorry.
voting on the other ones. Thank you, Madam.
Representative Greenwood?
Yeah, no, I knew that the 3 + 3 would be 6. It wouldn't change the outcome, but I wanted to see how the bill finally fared out overall before we voted on these remaining measures, these tabled items. That was my point. Sorry for the
They're all
confusion.
they're all duplicative. There are 3 standalone bills and there are 2 that are identical to the one we will be voting on. So I think that this is the one bill that we need to move forward that folks will be voting on, and we can dispense with the others. Representative Tool? Did you have your hand up, sir?
Where'd you go?
I don't see him. Oh, there he is.
I hit the wrong button. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. So we have before us LD 733, LD 1018, LD 1056, LD 1057, LD 1058. Do I have a motion on any of these bills? Representative Bryant?
Move on not to pass on all 5 bills.
Can we group all these 5 bills together and vote ought not to pass? No? Representative Lynn?
I'm not aware of any reason why you can't, as long as the members are going to vote the same on all 5. But I think you should probably do them one at a time, just so we're
Okay.
clear. Yeah.
Okay. Representative Bryant?
What is the first bill?
733.
Move on to not to pass on 733.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any comment about this bill? There being none, Cheryl, could you call the roll?
Yes, I will. LD 733 ought not to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Tool.
Yes.
Representative William Tool, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
No.
Representative Randall Greenwood, no. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
Yes.
Representative Francis Head, yes. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 9 yes, 1 no, 3 absent.
Thank you very much. We now have before us LD 1018. May I have a motion on LD, Lynn? Oh, I'm sorry. We need
Yeah.
Representative Greenwood.
Ought to pass, and I'll do as amended because it will have a fiscal note.
Thank you. My apologies. Now LD 1018. Do I have a motion on LD 1018? Representative Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move ought not to pass on LD 1018.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second on that one?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Paulus. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this bill? Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the sake of clarity, which bill, which of the three, which is, I think I've got notes from a couple of people saying they're lost, so.
This was Representative Falkingham's bill? Yes,
Okay,
Representative Falkingham's bill with regard to all three of the constitutional officers? No?
I believe he had 3 separate bills.
Right.
This is Representative Andrews.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, sorry.
Would you like one of us to read the title each time you get one and who the
Please.
sponsor is? Would that help?
I think
Yes.
that would be helpful.
I'll do this one, and then Cheryl, do you want to do the others? This is a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Maine to allow the citizens of the state to elect the Secretary of State, the Treasurer of the State, and the Attorney General. 10-8.
Are there any further questions? Anybody else have a question about this bill or the bill that we are voting on? There being none, Cheryl, could you call the roll for this vote? This is ought not to pass.
Yes. LD 1018 ought not to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
Yeah,
Representative William Toole, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
No.
Representative Randall Greenwood, no. Representative Sean Paulus. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
Yes.
Representative Francis Head, yes. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 9 yes, 1 no, 3 absent, and minority?
Ought to pass with the amendment of the fiscal note.
Okay, thank you very much. The next 3 bills are Representative Falkingham's individual bills. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
1056, 1057, 1058. May I have a motion on LD 1056? Representative Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on not to pass on 1056.
Thank you very much. May I have is there a second on this bill?
Second.
Thank you, Senator. It's been moved and seconded. If you would like, if somebody could read the bill that we will be voting on.
Yes. LD 1056, resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Maine to provide for the popular election of the Attorney General.
Does anybody have any questions or comments with regard to this bill? There being none. Representative Toole.
I'm sorry, I'm hitting the wrong buttons all day today, and I hit the unmute button. But no, my votes on these bills are not my reflection on the issue. I think, as has been mentioned earlier, certainly support the issue and the idea of putting these out to the voters, but not a fan of doing each separately and spending $500,000 when we could do so for $170,000.
Thank you, Senator Baldacci.
I just want to concur with the Representative Toole's comments. Obviously, if we had to revisit any of these, we're voting on the prevailing side, we could move to reconsider, but it's not a reflection of my opinion on these bills as well. I think that the popular election of these officers is long overdue in this state, and I'm glad we're moving forward in general. But as Representative Toole said, it's not a reflection on the individual bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments on this bill? There being none, Cheryl, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, LD 1056 ought not to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
Yes.
Representative William Toole, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
No.
Representative Randall Greenwood, no. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
No.
Representative Francis Head, no. Representative Donna Greenwood.
You're mixing your metaphors.
Is that your wife's name? Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 8 yes, 2, nope. Yeah, 8 yes, 2 no, 3 absent.
Ought to pass as amended with the fiscal note.
Thank you very much. LD 1057. May I have a motion on this bill? Representative Bryant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on not to pass an LD 1057. It is the popular election of the state Secretary of State by Representative Falkingham.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. As Representative Bryant said, this is a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Maine to provide for the popular election of the Secretary of State. Do we have any comments with regard to this bill? There being none, Cheryl, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, LD 1057 ought not to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
Yes.
Representative William Toole, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
No.
Representative Randall Greenwood, no. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
No.
Representative Francis Head, no. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 8 yes, 2 no, 3 absent. Minority report.
Ought to pass as amended with the fiscal note.
Thank you very much. And finally, our last work session today, LD 1058, Representative Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
There you go. You're on mute. There we go.
There we go. My
There you go.
apologies. I'll move on not to pass an LD 1058, which is the treasurer.
I'll
Thank you.
second that.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. So I have a motion and a second on 1058. This is the resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Maine to provide for the popular election of the treasurer of the state. Are there any further questions or comments with regard to this bill? There being none, Cheryl, could you call the roll?
Yes, I will. LD 1058 ought not to pass. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
Yes.
Representative William Toole, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
No.
Representative Randall Greenwood, no. Representative Sean Paulus.
Yes.
Representative Sean Paulus, yes. Representative Francis Head.
No.
Representative Francis Head, no. Representative Donna Dorr, absent. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland, absent. 8 yes, 2 no, and 3 absent. Ought to pass as amended.
Minority report to be ought to pass with fiscal note making it an amendment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have concluded our work session for this morning. We are barely into this afternoon. We'll be back in about an hour at 1 o'clock. We have 2 public hearings. Do we have anything to discuss before we move on? Senator Baldacci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just indicate we're going to do President Jackson's bill first, and then and then 817. He's going to have to speak first because he has some other commitments going on. I just want to let the committee know.
Thank you. Representative Greenwood.
Yeah, just let the committee know that I'll be a few minutes late. It'll be a little bit after 1 before I get back.
Thank you. I'm hoping we won't have a problem with quorum. I don't think at that point. Most other people will be back at 1 o'clock. Perfect. Then we will anticipate you coming in when you can. Thank you. So we are, I guess I need a motion to adjourn the work sessions, or do we just declare ourselves out of session? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? All those in favor?
Yeah.
We'll see you at 1 o'clock then. Thank you very much.